I'd like to call this regular meeting of the German Township Trustees to order. Could you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Easton, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Dr. Cross,
Here.
Mr. Stubbs.
Here.
Mr. Potter.
Here.
All are present.
Next, we're going to move on to visitor comments. And I remind you, if you come, please make your comments at the podium and state your name and address the first time to speak. Tonight, we have a representative, Brett Jones, from the Public Health Dayton and Montgomery County. He is here to make a presentation concerning sewage system operational and maintenance permit program countywide. So, you better come on up if you could.
Great. So I'm just here to answer any questions anybody has. Or what we're going to be doing is sending out a letter to most residents that are on their own on-site sewage treatment systems. We've done this. We used to do it in the beginning of 1980s.
Sir, could you come closer to the microphone?
Oh, okay.
Great that you face them.
Okay.
You are recording it right there.
Is this good?
That's perfect.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay. So anyhow, we had some sewage rules change approximately right around 2015. So we didn't send out last batch of letters in 2014. Since then, the rules changed and gave the owner the option of either and some registered company to come out and clean the tank and evaluate the system, or the owner has to choose to potentially have the health department come out and look. So anyhow, we never got around to it, and then COVID hit and a bunch of things. So we're going to be starting that program up soon. Question.
What is this?
So we've had different types of systems since the mid 1980s. We're starting to see more of the mound-based systems, which are above ground. We still have traditional leach fields that go in. It just depends on what type of, for the most part, soil you guys have. But to answer your question, if you're on a traditional leach field about every 10 years, but if you have a newer type like a mound system or something like that, something different, every 5 years.
Cost to have that done.
So if you choose to have a third party come out and evaluate it, you still have to submit $75 to public health. If you choose to have us come out, it's $100. But either or, we still, check to make sure you're having your system maintained, your septic tank cleaned out, so on and so forth.
I'm just curious.
Mark, you guys want to start? Just say your name, please.
Peter, 7865 Lake Road. So I've lived out here in the township for 13 years, and so we have never gotten a letter from public health saying get it inspected. Blah, blah,
Okay.
blah. I realize I'm a newbie in this area. Look around here and see cases that have been in this area for all their lives, so,
Okay.
which is multiple decades. But I'm just curious how many people in this room, Kurt, I'm guessing you've never gotten a letter. If you're asking them, how often do you get a letter? You've been out here for
31 years.
So
31
why-
years.
what's going
Okay,
on?
so it also depends on the age of your home. If your home is older than, say, the mid 1980s, if it's older than that,
Okay,
you never would have received a letter.
okay. And mine was built in 2000.
In 2000, and you still never did.
I haven't gotten any.
Okay. So during the 80s and 90s, we had a tremendous amount of systems that went in, dual leach fields. Is anybody on a dual leach system?
Yeah.
You would have been, how old's your home?
8, 4, 5.
Okay, so that was right about the time they started putting 2 leach fields in. So to answer your question, I don't know. I don't know why. At some point you would have, we weren't really aggressive with it. We would send maybe 100 letters out per year because we simply just don't have the staff, you know. Other counties really go after, you know, the residents. We just haven't. But
No, go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, the floor.
No, you go ahead.
So are you saying that once we've had it inspected, that we're good for 10 years?
if you're on a traditional leach field, yes,
Additional being
below ground,
gravity?
And is traditional one leach or is mine with two?
regardless, doesn't matter.
What's involved? Okay, what would trigger a failure? As they say that you're no longer alive.
So the reason, you know, and I'll get to your question in a minute. The reason why we haven't, you know, been active and given the older homes notices, some of those homes, you know, have been established since 1950s, 60s. It's at some point your system's going to fail. It's going to start backing up. It just, or, you know, sewage is going to surface on the ground. So at the time that you have to have your system replaced would mean that's when that permit starts kicking in. You. Sure, go ahead.
It's James Rowland, 10021 Carlisle Pike.
Okay,
So properties I own are all older in the 80s. I haven't seen any letters. I won't see any letters.
you won't,
Won't have any problems unless.
you shouldn't.
No, I mean, you guys are going to come out to my house.
At some point, you may get a letter, you know,
Okay, so.
but we're going after the permits that we used to send out all the time, which we stopped, you know, right around 2014.
I've lived in the area for 60 years.
Okay,
My dad never had a letter. I've owned my place for over 30 years. I've never had a letter. My house was originally built, original part of the house was built in the 1800s.
okay.
The other houses on the lane were probably built in the 50s. My dad's house was built in the 50s or 60s.
I mean, we have thousands in the county. We're trying to go seek the ones that have had a permit previously, which has since expired. We're trying to get that revamped.
So since if it's something older and permitted stuff.
If you need
that
it.
you guys existed,
But if it just stops working
right, you gotta
and
call.
you need a new system, that's going to trigger at least the operation permit.
Right, well, revised code says that it has to be a public health nuisance, which you have to have.
Typ- Typically,
Something cooling or something.
or
to
it's
see.
failing and stacking up in your residence.
Right. So that's basically, if you don't have a public health nuisance, you're okay.
Yes.
So the cost of the inspection, so if you have a private company, are you going to send out the names of those companies?
Well, and that's part of the reason why we stopped doing it, because we just had our own policy until the revised code, administrative code, which changed roughly around 2015. At that point, gave the option to homeowners to either call their local health department or reach out to a third registered party.
You guys staff wise would take forever to get you out and if you would have to have it.
No, we would follow up in a reasonable time.
So what, that kind of long courtesy, you know, failure would be, you know, it backs up, but what do you look for when you come out to
So,
check out a problem?
I mean, getting this program back up and running also gives the homeowners the opportunity to become more involved with their own system. When we come out and we look at various systems, we'll point out, you know, certain things about a septic tank or, you know, the internal components of the tank that a lot of owners just simply aren't aware of, or even the frequency they're supposed to clean their tanks. I mean, I've been for residents before where they may have had a 40-year-old system and they've never cleaned their septic tank. They just simply didn't know they were supposed to.
So you said basically houses built before 1980, they probably never got a letter, never got a permit,
Chances are correct.
but you're only going to the houses that you have permitted. So,
That we have permitted, we're trying to get those permits back up and running again.
so the house is older than 1980.
That's going to be years before we probably get back to reaching out to
Okay,
those
so-
homes.
Newer houses. Okay. Is this a county-wide initiative or is this a statewide initiative?
It's a statewide initiative that
Okay.
each health department is supposed to have some kind of a program like this.
Okay. Because I'm just going to tell you, you send these letters out, you're going to get a lot of unhappy people,
We understand
a
that,
lot of unhappy people.
right?
Um,
But it's something that we've, it's not new. It's something that we've done in the past.
Right, okay. It kind of seems like it's a solution looking for a problem because if people have an issue with their septic tank, they're gonna call somebody and they're gonna take care of it. If you don't have an issue with your septic tank, you're not gonna.
So if they do call that company and it's off the record, we don't find out about it. I mean, that's kind of any system that goes in, any component like a septic tank, or if somebody has a failed leach field, they're supposed to get a permit for it and get it inspected.
Right,
So having this program will help see, and that's why it's important for owners to keep receipts.
right. And I think another thing is too, the price, so your chart on the letter we got, it says that at the township, it says that if we get a permit and have a registered service contractor, it's a $50 permit. If it's the local.
Or 75.
Oh, is it 70, the letter they sent?
Does it say 50?
Mhm.
It is 50.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
But my point is if it's actually a public health thing and we're trying to take care of a problem, if there is a problem, or we're charging a fee at the county level for this when we pay our taxes in Montgomery County, the whole western side of the county is the only people going to be affected by this. See what I'm saying? So like German Township, Jackson Township, Perry Township, Clay, we're going to be the ones affected. No one else is going to be affected by this.
Believe it or not, I mean, there's just a handful of septic systems, maybe in Kettering,
Okay.
Centerville, Washington
There's still a few
Township,
over there. Okay.
right? For the most part, it's anybody that has their own on-site sewage treatment system.
So if you have to replace your system, I mean, cost-wise, do you have a
We're-
ballpark as far as?
I mean, the goal is not to go after residents to just replace their system regardless of age.
Well, and that's the fear.
But it's not going to be geared towards that.
Because you've got, in this area, a lot of 100, 200-year-old houses,
Exactly.
that have older septic systems that are working properly. And when
Right.
you have someone come out and inspect them,
And our goal is not to go knocking door to door and say, I need to see your septic system. It's more or less, like I said, we're going after the residents that had permits before, that we're going after the oldest permitted residences first, which began in the mid 80s.
okay,
Then we'll start going after the ones in the 90s, 2000 and 2010.
So you're going, not a certain geographical area is going to get, or how you guys?
No, we're not going straight every,
You're going by age,
we're going by age. We're going by whoever had a permit before, trying to get that resident to renew their permit.
what happens if they don't, what happens if they don't respond to the
If
letter?
they don't respond, we typically send 3 notices out, and then a fourth final notice basically states that, okay, we've given you notice, we need to come out into your property and take a look. We're just going to show up maybe with us, and if need be, law enforcement, and just do a thorough evaluation.
So you have the right on people's property with law enforcement? to
If they
check a
have,
sewage
if they
system?
have a septic system that's been permitted previously.
But what if they have a septic system that was never permitted?
He's only talking about permitted.
Permitted
Okay.
at first.
That's not what the letter says.
I'm just,
Well, at some point, like I said, we're going to start, once we get the ones that have been previously permitted, then we're going to see, we have a different system. They didn't keep good records in the 40s, 1950s, and 60s. Until about 1970, late sixties, seventies, they started keeping better track of what was, installed and inspected.
How does it affect someone who, say they came into the township 3 years ago, bought a property that was built in the 90s, had their septic system examined or whatever? I mean, I told it needed to be pumped. It's been taken care of. How does that affect someone like that?
Under new ownership. So if they can't generate records showing that the tank's been pumped, we're not going to be overbearing on that. We're probably just going to say, hey, you may want to have your tank cleaned professionally. If you don't know,
When are you guys recommending? How often do you recommend a pump?
we recommend every 3 to 5 years.
So
But it also depends on the amount of people that live in the residence too.
Properly operated septic system doesn't require pumping. Only requires pumping to get solids in. It don't biodegrade. If you're only putting stuff in it that biodegrades.
And
A proper septic system never requires pumping. Unless you put stuff in it that you shouldn't be putting in it.
as an inspector though, I've talked to residents that had to have their tank replaced.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying a properly operated system never requires pumping. Septic system, they only require it if you're putting solids or things in them that do not biodegrade and accumulate in the tank.
And
The stuff is supposed to all biodegrade. When your leach field drains the liquid off, and solids, they get rid of themselves in there. Saying it has to be pumped every so often, I can understand that because people cram a lot of stuff down their toilet.
everybody's habits have been really different.
They shouldn't.
Exactly.
But if you are properly take care of your septic system.
And that's for the most part, all that we want to see is, hey, you've had it cleaned out. It's not, we're not trying to fault somebody if they haven't pumped in their tank and it's been, 8 years. We're just going to recommend, hey, it's a good idea to keep your tank cleaned and everything.
So if they can provide records that, hey, I bought this house 6 years ago, it was pumped then, you guys are okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we still have to give you $75 for that privilege of giving you the.
Is this a directive from the county commissioners? Or where did this
No.
come from?
This came actually from the Ohio Department of Health. So
Same people that locked us down for years.
So, we are audited by the state health department.
Okay,
And if they notice that we have been delinquent and having an operation permit program,
gotcha.
they're not, they're concerned about that.
How does someone find out whether they own a house that was ever permitted? Say I bought a house.
And you never knew it had a septic system?
No, if I bought a house tomorrow that was built in the mid-80s and it was a permitted house, it was one of the houses that you had previously been, it had its proper permit.
It's a good question because, it's kind of up to the previous owner to disclose that to the new owner.
You wait and see if you get a letter.
I won't say how.
Confusion here. I know there's been difference between a permit. Because a permit says I'm allowed to build something, you're allowed to look at it, make sure it's okay. And then it's put in and it's over. There's no re-permitting. What you're talking about now is a license.
So that's-
Not a permit.
It's specific to your sewage treatment system.
That a permit is not, there's a difference between a permit and a license. You're talking about,
It's a permit. It's a permit that needs to be renewed.
you don't renew permits. Permits something you put in and they okay it or they don't okay it. And once you've done it, it's. How are you going back and telling people they have to re-permit something that they've already permitted and put it in?
It's a little different, I think, than.
Because I have a question, because in section 3718.012 of the Ohio Revised Code, it says a sewage treatment system that was in operation prior to the effective date of this section shall not be required to be replaced with new sewage treatment system under this chapter or rules adopted under it and shall be deemed approved if the system does not cause a public health nuisance. And this was September 17th, 2010. So any house that's built before 2010, unless it's showing that it's a public nuisance, and if you go to section 3718.00011, it defines what public nuisance is. So this blanket thing of going after everybody that's in the area is not go with what the Ohio Revised Code says. So I'm with what Jake's saying here. This is not right, what's going on. If there's a public.
Jim, let Brett talk, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry.
So it is a little different when you said shall not be replaced unless it's creating a nuisance. Yes, that means replacing your entire system.
When did it talks in there about?
But
not
this-
Make any changes.
But this is a little different. It's a permit. Saying, okay, you have your own on-site sewage treatment system. Show us, what you're doing to maintain it, or you have your tank cleaned. Do you have, maybe a lid replaced that you ran over or hit with a lawnmower, so on and so forth.
Again, if it's not a public nuisance, why is it an issue?
It's a permit that needs to be
But
removed.
under a Ohio Revised Code, it says you don't need to worry about it unless it's a public nuisance.
We're not.
Well, I'm just going by.
I know you're the messenger
Going by Ohio
for the
Revised Code.
plan, so I think the questions directed at you are more of a, not at you, but more of a, why is this happening? And you just happen to be the guy standing here. I think Ronald Reagan once said the most dangerous words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And I think that's kind of what's going on. If there's a problem, I totally understand. But when there's we're searching for problems that don't exist. And that's the issue that I have, I think that you have.
And you're gonna make people pay.
And yeah, well, and that too, I mean.
That's the other thing. If you want to do it for free, that's fine. But if you're gonna come in and start telling people they gotta pay to do something that's already been permitted, and then if it's working properly, everything's good, and if it's a public nuisance, then it should be addressed and it has to be addressed.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you state your name,
Oh.
please?
Jacqueline Williams, 15841, State Route 725. You said after somebody notices that you can put on property, it's off there. But if that area that it's on, it's fenced off and has livestock in it. Well, I mean, me and him work crazy hours, like,
Right, but
and I,
I can assure you, Brian Williams, same for us.
keep in mind,
Not gonna be too happy if someone comes on our property and.
you're going to be given prior or previous notices.
right, I'm thinking absolute worst case scenario, we've left the country for a month. And we've missed all our notices and, my mom's watching the farm and she pulls up and hears everybody and their brother tromping around the field and there my horses are gallivanting down 725, like.
I mean, we have the respect not to open gates, to be honest with you.
Okay. That's my question. The areas are fenced in,
I
needed.
kind of question whether there's an authority to open a gate or move onto a property, but.
There isn't. So that's, where it's, can we look, can we see? All that we're making, we just don't want to show up to a property. And there are properties out there that is just spilling out on top of the ground, potentially going onto a neighbor's property. And we get notified for that, yes.
Like-
Well, and that's something that should be taken care of and that somebody turned it in and.
And this program isn't just going, knocking on doors and.
How flexible are you gonna be with homeowners as far as, like, I'm sure that your guys probably work, 8 to 5?
We do.
Well, what about people who work 8 to 5 and, I mean, you can't expect them to take time off to meet you guys out
Exactly.
there. So how flexible are you gonna be with homeowners?
For the most part, all that we need is either permission or to arrange an appointment after hours, if need be.
You guys are willing to do after hours?
We can.
The question, so if a septic system needs to be replaced, is it going to have to be replaced by a mound system?
Not necessarily. It just depends on what your soil type is.
To a mound system to us a little bit real quick.
Okay. different parts of the county, you've got areas, and I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So the whole reason the sewage rules changed in 2015, you had, you need.
No, you're good. You're good. He's just moving the microphone closer to you.
There's another mic there.
Okay, great. So for the most part, years ago when they put, everybody got a leach field. What they did when they installed those prior to rule changes, for the most part in 2015, everybody got a leach field. It was below ground. They installed them very deep in the ground because a lot of the areas are flat. They wanted gravity to work. So in flat areas, you have to install your leach field 3 inches below ground just to get fall out of the tank to the leach field. Fortunately, that's right where a lot of the water table issues lie. That's why a lot of people have issues with their septic system backing up into the tank and potentially in the lowest fixture of their house. It typically happens during the rainy season, late fall, spring, summer, things dry up and it works great. So the newer type mound systems are predominantly on top of the ground, filled in. They're constructed of sand with a gravel bed, you know, at least maybe a foot above natural grade, and it's pressurized. You have to have a pump. So the sewage water, you have to have a separate lift station on the back end of the septic tank with a pump, with an alarm. If the pump ever failed, the alarm kicks on and says, call a company out, have them come out and look. So the whole reason for the mound system is to try to keep it up and out of the water table so it functions at all times.
So when we talked about this previously, what if, how long do those systems last? I mean, you have a leach field that may last for 30, 40 years.
Any system depends on how it's treated.
Any data on how long those pumps last, or what's the?
Pumps can last anywhere from 5 to 7 years. It could last 10 years. It just, as you use the water and the pump kicks on, if families are using a tremendous amount of water, that's going to lessen the life of pumps.
For Jacoby, 12955 Harris Road. So honestly, out where we are, the septic tank has been more reliable than our electric.
Okay.
So when that pump goes out,
Do you have a pump? Pipe?
we don't have one, no. But if we did, or we're required to get one, I'd be more suspect that the pump would fail. Therefore, we wouldn't have, you know, the ability to evacuate our sewage than I would the current system that we've got.
The way the lift stations has been in calculations that there's supposed to be a specific gap where the floats are that triggers a pump. That makes sense.
You would have.
So what you've got 24 to 48 hours for a company to come. A lot of these companies have extra pumps on hand because they're aware there's a lot, you know.
As long as we don't have another Hurricane Ike that knocks us out in 2 days.
Who suspected on it,
Yeah.
right?
So your terminology, so the outside inspector, is that just anybody that's going to pump my tank? I mean, I call American Septic or
Somebody like All American, right?
and he'll sign off on something.
That's why that's part of our request to call us out. Is we're going to say, okay, you called All American. I'm throwing that name. I'm not endorsing. But if you call a company out and you decide to go with them and submit our fee, we're going to make arrangements to somehow meet with you and ask, okay, you know, while they were there, did they replace, say, a baffle in the septic tank? Or, you know, how many gallons did they pump out? And did they see any signs of surfacing? Do they see anything backing up in the riser of the tank? Anything at all?
So if I ask, and I mean, I'm the type of guy, I mean, I've worked on some projects, Jeremy knows I ask questions all the time and it's here out in the shop. So I'm the type of guy that when my septic guy was out there, I asked him everything. So,
No, right.
and you know.
And it's good. I mean, that's what we want homeowners to do is, just be aware of your system, your components.
So where I'm going with this is you're talking about maintaining the septic tank and the dual leach fields. And so, I asked questions about that and he taught me in the effluent filter and to pull that out every year and a half or so and hose
Yes.
it down so it doesn't
Right.
back up and I get sewage in my house
Right.
and all the rest of that. And we talked about the risers. I mean, so all this is casual conversation. I, absorbed everything, so to speak. And, but none of it's documented. So
That's why this company, he's technically kind of requires a septic hauler to produce what's called a pumping report
okay.
that documents, is there a riser there? Are the lids in good condition? Did he see evidence of it backing up? So on and so forth.
So he's doing that when he gets back in the truck, he's filling all that paperwork out. I probably got a copy
He
of
is
it.
supposed to.
Okay, and I'm
Right.
sure.
And if he doesn't, you could always request and say, hey, I want a pumping report showing that you were here. I need that.
And so from a practicality standpoint, for everybody in here that's never gotten the letter, I mean, are we going to be expecting something in the next 3 weeks, 3 years? I mean, it sounds like you're sending out.
We are
You-
starting, yes, we're starting, not all at once, because as a health department, we can't maintain that. We'd have to have a staff of over 100 just for something like this,
So you're sending out, I mean,
batches. So we may start, where we left off, that's been long overdue. The 80s, when we, as a health department, originally started this program, we're going to be reaching out, to that era and progressively reach where we are today.
there's somebody that had a house
So
built.
again, that's a long time. It's going to take years for the most part.
Once you finish that process of those that you already know
It's going to be continually renewing.
then you are going to then try to find those residences that are never been permitted, that would have been built prior to the 80s. What process will you follow
So we
to
have
find those addresses?
very good question. We have records which date, I think the earliest that I've seen in our records dates back to 1941. Not every house that was constructed in the 40s were always ever honest. That's about the creation of the health department. So there's quite a few residents that never had, any inspections or records performed.
And how
So in our health department, we're going to start, we have an array of so many records that don't have addresses on them that may give a description, because when the house was built, probably never issued an address. And it may say 500 feet north of Chip Road on State Route 725. So those records, we may have hundreds of them that somebody is going to manually have to go through and take a look.
Then if you go older than the 40s, as was mentioned earlier, we have a lot of houses from the
1800s, right?
What's your process to find all that?
So, at some point, like I said, throughout this whole process, if somebody has an older home and they don't even know where their septic system is, maybe they want to replace it.
But if it's working good,
If it's failing.
But
it's
until
failing.
until they would get to that point, you would not be able to
It's going
determine.
to take an extremely long time.
So those of us that have newer systems and maintain them, are going to be penalized while somebody that's got a 130-year-old system is completely off the hook. And I don't mind maintaining it. I don't even mind providing you documentation that it's maintained. What irks the crap out of me is I have to pay you for that privilege.
At some point, and maybe you're a newer owner, maybe you're stepping into this, but the previous owner, whoever, maybe it was prior to the last owner. And it could have been 3 or 4 owners ago. Maybe they just didn't disclose that.
Disclose what, the permit?
Yeah, the permit
Well,
process. And that's why we're reaching out to the various townships.
I'm sure, well, I'm the second owner. The house was built, like I said, in 2000.
In
So I'm
2000.
sure, there was permits taken out because everything's,
Right.
done right by the guy who I know that built it.
Let me also explain to you that when, and this is where the owners and the people that actually install the systems, when they install a septic system, they have to apply for what's called an installation permit. When they do that, the installation permit on the application has certain verbiage on it, most part, that says, once this is installed, it's approved. There's what's called a sewage operation permit that's going to have to be renewed. Like I said, we've been so understaffed. We've only been sending batches out. In the 80s, you had a construction boom, even the 90s, where there was, just systems installed. So maybe we just, as a health department, didn't send you one yet.
It would seem, I'm sorry, it would seem like a good idea that the property changes hands. So the new owner is not getting stuck with something.
And that's also kind of why we're wanting some insight. That's why we're going to the various township zoning meetings.
That way, there's money there, exchanging hands, has to do something to bring things up to code.
Right, whatever, but there's a reason at that point.
And it would permit, have to be inspected, like a home inspection or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably something that we could start doing in the future that we haven't done before.
And I guess I agree with Mark. I feel like if a homeowner can provide documentation saying, yeah, my stuff's been looked at and cleaned out 3 years ago. Yes, I agree with him. Is why
I could be wrong, but I
being
think there's
penalized.
some certain verbiage in the administrative code that says health departments have to charge a certain amount.
I mean, even if you guys, not you, I
No,
got it. But
I'm
even
just
if you guys really aren't doing anything, you come to my house and I'm like, here, look, we did it 3 years ago. I still got
It's
to
a
pay you 50
formal
bucks.
process.
Had to pay him to come out there.
Yeah.
Part of the fee has to do with the renewing of the permit process.
I'm just confused as to how, you have to get a building permit, you have to get electric permit, you have to get a permit for your sanitary system. But you don't have to come back and get them to look at your electric, you don't have to get them to come back and look at your house, you don't have to re-permit this stuff. I don't understand why we're having to re-permitting these systems that are already in.
I'm just saying, you had to reissue an electric permit on some of the old stuff that it's not up to code. You gotta re-permit it.
If you're working, if you're working on
If you're working.
it, I agree. If you work on your septic system or something like that, it's got to be re-permitted. I understand if something tears up and you get it worked on, it's got to be, but I'm saying, I'm sitting in my house, everything's working fine. Why do I have to get a permit for my electric or my septic or my anything else? And that's the concern I have with this.
I think you've got authority under the ORC to do this. It's not like you decided.
It's actually the Ohio Administrative Code.
So it's not like,
Anybody can look
if
it
you have a problem, I think, call the health department, but it is allowed. You may not like it and you're probably not going to like it, but the township has nothing to do with it.
Well, I know it's on the township. It's wonderful in every county.
For the most part, it's not even, the health department on a whole. We're following the administrative code. Sewage treatment system.
Any other questions so we can kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, so I think I touched on a question. I wasn't sure exactly if it was answered. So in the inspection findings, let's say somebody comes out and what constitutes whether an owner has to repair or replace? I know you listed some things like a missing lid or a cracked lid. So some of that's maybe completely visible, but are there, like, dipping down inside and measuring, are there some specific metrics?
We're looking at, you know, a lot of the tanks are concrete, so we're looking for severe deterioration of those. We're looking for almost to the point where everybody's witnessed concrete and what it does with salt and age. But these tanks are subject to a lot of corrosive conditions, sulfide gas, salt from your water softener. And at some point, you know, that gets in your tank, it's concrete, it starts corroding it severely.
I'm just concerned that you get to the point where it becomes a subjective thing and then the government's always right.
Like I said, we're not going after and saying, okay, yeah, it's been 20 years, it's probably a good time to replace your tank. We're not doing that. We're looking for signs of corrosion, deterioration, or maybe even a baffle inside that tank. Because that baffle on the outlet inside, on the interior of the septic tank, if that gives away and drops off, which they do, and nobody ever cleans their tank, all your solid waste then goes out and starts plugging up your leach field. And over time, once you have a severe plug, then it'll start creeping back inside the house, or it could.
And that's the time when you call a septic person and you get a permit.
Right, but under a permit, and that's part, you know, like I said, part of the operation permit is so, you know, we could make sure that you're maintaining it.
It can't, you know, it is what it is, but I mean, you may be able to get off really big problems by making that inspection. I mean, if you look at it that way.
And if we, you know, let's say, okay, I'm going to go with the health department to come out and evaluate the system. We're looking for seeing if we see black sludge oozing out of the ground. If you have a wet spot somewhere, it doesn't look right. That's not an automatic full replacement. You better call a company out to come out and see if they can make a repair. Because chances are a lot of it is just screws plugging up a 2-foot section.
One question. If you come out and inspect first, and then there's a problem, we don't have to repay you. I have to call
No.
all the cities to come out and fix them.
No. We would follow up because we want to make sure that whatever the repair would have been
Right.
is fixed. So the wet spot's gone. And
You're
I'm
not
just,
gonna charge again.
we don't charge to come back out. No, we do not. It's the fee is for the most part to renew your operation permit.
It's a 10-year cycle.
If you're on a gravity leach system, that's a 10-year cycle. And the reason why we're having, the mound systems that are above ground, they have more components. They have pumps, they have alarms. So if you catch something that may not be working in 5 years, you have the opportunity to have it fixed in a timely manner.
You mentioned that the Ohio Department of Health is involved, kind of pushing this from the state level to all the counties.
Yes.
Okay, so there's always been the issue of septic tanks leaking into waterways, creeks, lakes, that kind of thing. Does the EPA have any kind of presence in this push at all?
If they would and received a complaint, they're going to walk, whatever ditch or waterway this is, they're going to look for a direct pipe of some sort. If they do find a pipe and they discover, oh yeah, there's a residence within 500 feet, what they're probably going to do is call the health department. They have the health department. And that's
why I know.
right.
They're looking for puddling, they're looking for lines with smell like of sewage system.
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Well, no, what's,
Thanks for coming out. We
so
appreciate
did I answer everybody's questions? Are there any more?
Takeaway is most of us aren't really going to hear anything from you guys for quite a while.
It's going to be a while, like I said. with doing this.
Got old houses, stuff's working fine, remodeling and stuff like that. I'm not gonna be seeing any fatty.
Even if you did,
No, I mean, if there's nothing, if we're not having, right,
right. I mean, it's not good to see a pipe going out to a ditch or. a
oh,
well.
no, none of my stuff's like that, it's all legal.
Okay.
We live in the, on 123. And it's all, it's gravel there and it's. We have zero problem.
Right.
Those of us that gave you a hard time, we're not at the top of the list now.
I'll provide addresses.
I actually do have a serious question then. If we wanted to get like a sketch of whatever was originally brought to you guys, we can come down to you and get that.
Yeah, so you guys have my card and information. I don't know if there's a way for you guys to put that on your website. If you have any septic questions or any concerns.
Well, if we put that on the website, you guys send out the
No.
letters.
I know, I mean, just maybe the general number. Yeah. We understand there might be a lot of concerned citizens. And it's upsetting to know that if you haven't paid for something, even if you're the new owner and you're two owners and nobody disclosed it to you. When it gets passed, especially when the installer and the builder have no conversation at all. The owner of their new home never realizes they have a sewage operation permit. Has anybody received a letter at all? Okay, so it's primarily older systems except for yours, right?
Ours is newer.
Okay, what year?
2000, up to
Early
93.
93, 92.
93, okay.
At least that's when the house was built. We never owned it for over a decade and I've never heard a thing, so.
Okay. Now, if anybody's interested in just giving us a call, because, if we don't, we can definitely look to see if you have a record on your septic system. And that way you could have it, if you decide to call a company to come clean the tank, they know where everything is.
Yeah, I'm talking though also about getting like the sketch of where the leach lines are.
That's what I'm talking
Okay.
about. Yeah. We call it a sanitation plot plan. Or I think you have one. Do you have a drawing?
Yeah, I think we've got it in the original.
Okay.
Well, thank you for coming
Yeah,
out.
thanks for.
Thank you for
Yeah,
answering all the
you're
questions.
welcome. Nobody else has anything? Okay.
Well, that's great. Thanks again.
All right, appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
Okie dokie. Any more visitor comments? Careful going home.
Appreciate it.
Okay, any more visitor comments? No? Mark, do you have anything from the JED?
We're down to quarterly meetings now, and I actually gave, I don't know if Mr. Easton's going to put it in this report. I left the check under his door, or under his door, a month or so ago for the first distribution. I don't even remember how much it was.
It was 7,200, 7,400, something like that.
This is my report.
Okay.
Yeah, 7420.
It's exciting news when the check arrives.
And collections from the contractor are still slow. I get an email when somebody makes a deposit, and I have not gotten an email in quite a while.
So the problem is getting all the subcontractors actually to pay their income tax. So she's concerned.
She's been very diligent with following up on the contractors, and she's got a list of who's been cooperative, who's been less than cooperative, and may, depending on the cooperation, ask the attorney what kind of you might have to go after the contract. One other thing that did come up at the last meeting is we spoke about other employers that were there, which brought up first student transportation. And so the board approved their first student. I mean, they're operating in Germantown, Farmersville, German Township, Jackson Township, and now at the JED. So they're spending a nice portion of their day out at the high school picking up kids. And so those wages those bus drivers are earning while they're sitting at the high school dropping up, picking up, are subject to the JED withholding. So we will be contacting first student and getting some allocations of their routes to see how they're going to start withholding for the various jurisdictions. Right now, Germantown has been collecting 100% of income tax on wages regardless. So Farmersville has not been getting anything for decades that they should be getting while the buses are. See if we can't make that change.
Anybody else?
I have a really random question. Who do I contact about the internet that's being ran out on 725? Not that it ran by my house.
It's the Germantown PSC in Germantown.
Communication.
When I call the number, it just rings busy.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't run by my house, so it really doesn't matter. I'm just really
Unless
upset.
everything else that stopped is blocking half the way.
I'm just really upset. It stopped them, like, so many houses.
Well, you're almost to Preble County?
Yeah.
So are you Frontier? That was brought up.
Zero internet.
Who's your phone company right now?
We don't have a house phone,
Like, couldn't even
But
tell you.
it's
It's probably Frontier.
probably Frontier, and I
but
don't.
I mean, the Spectrum bot, like the Spectrum out stations, like I can walk to it without a problem. So I just figured they'd run, if they ran it down North Preble County Line Road, I figured they would just tie in.
Yeah, we don't have anything to do with
Yeah, and they just stopped short, and I was like driving home one day, and I was like, oh, they're on the other side of the road now, they're going back towards.
Sorry.
Welcome to the edge of the town there.
Yeah, but that's,
We get the same stuff.
We don't have internet, we can find out we don't have internet.
well, I would call TSC Communications and we had another resident. They stopped short on his road. He called, they ended up running it to his house.
Okay.
So then that was on Baden or one of those over in that general direction too. So I would give him a call and
Okay.
beg.
Yeah, like I said, they were in on the west side of our house, and then right on the east side, they just blended together.
Yeah.
And a friend of ours had talked to somebody, and they said, considered Frontier, but
Around the corner.
she's technically in Preble County. That's what they told her, was that she's considered.
Well, that would be a problem if you had the other provider. Is that Frontier's different than?
And the county line doesn't make any difference. That doesn't, I mean, there's Frontier and TSC in German Township. So,
Just a matter of address then.
right. Doesn't matter if you live in Preble or German, it's just sources.
Okay, thank you.
Fiscal officers report. Mark?
You're going to do the,
I am. So I'd like to introduce a motion to open a public hearing to hear case ZC 01-2023 text changes to the current zoning resolution. Do I have a second?
Second.
wants to be the second. Thank you. I heard you both talk.
Any discussion?
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All right. Okay, so Shauna, could you present your staff report?
The next change to German Township zoning resolution involved revising and replacing the Article 2 definition section. Changes to Article 2 were necessary to correct errors in the section that were previously approved at the 7/12/2021 trustee meeting. German Township Rural Zoning Commission drafted and approved the changes at the required public hearing held on May 30th, 2023. Montgomery County Planning reviewed the changes and recommended approval of the changes on May 11th, 2023. All legal advertising requirements have been met. Notice of this meeting appeared in the Germantown Press on June 29th, 2023.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Shauna?
This is just fixing an error
This is
that was submitted in error by a previous.
Correct, yeah, so. And I want to thank my wife because she did most of the editing.
Amazing. We appreciate that.
Okay, if no more discussion, I'd like to introduce a motion to close the public hearing. Oh,
You're going to have comments from the,
do you, any comments from the
it's
visitors?
a public hearing.
Yes. Thank you, Mark.
Sorry.
So again, there was just in the definition section of the zoning resolution, which is kind of our book of zoning, there were some mistakes made that had to be corrected. So we have to correct those. We corrected those mistakes, and those will be incorporated into the zoning resolution. Unfortunately. So, any other questions? I'll go ahead and introduce a motion to close the public hearing and reconvene the regular trustee meeting. I have a second.
Second. He's got it. Lou's got it.
I'll give it to Jake.
That doesn't matter.
Any discussion of the motion? All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Okay, I'd like to then introduce resolution 2023 dash.
Sorry, I should have that number ready. 31.
31, to amend the zoning resolution as presented in KZC 01-2023 and approved by the zoning commission to be effective in 30 days. Let me just read that real quick. As a resolution amending the German Township zoning resolution was recommended by the German Township Rules Zoning Commission in KZC 01-2023. Whereas the German Township Rules Zoning Commission has developed and held public hearings on the proposed amendment to the Township zoning resolution in the form of Zoning Commission case ZC 01-2023, presented the proposed amendment to the German Township Board of Trustees for action. And whereas the Montgomery County Planning Commission has reviewed said case and recommends approval in the case. Whereas the German Township Board of Trustees have reviewed, advertised as required, and held a public hearing on the proposed amendment to the German Township zoning resolution as presented in zoning case ZC 01-2023. Therefore, be it resolved that the German Township Board of Trustees recommend, pass the resolution, I should say, the easiest way. So,
Is there a second to resolution 2023-31? Any discussion of the resolution? If not, I will call the roll. Dr. Cross?
yes.
Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Potter?
Yes.
Resolution 2023-31 is adopted.
Thanks for hanging in there. Over to you, Mark.
Now you'd like my report. Okay. Good evening again, everyone. I've given you two sets of minutes for approval, the June 12th regular meeting and the June 29th special meeting. Are there any changes?
I didn't see anything. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of 6/12/23 regular meeting and the 6/29/23 special meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I've also given you the June financial reports. You have the fund status at the end of June. You have the cash summary by fund year to date through the end of June. You have the month of June cash summary by fund. You have the June receipt listing and the June payment listing. And there are two items that I do want to point out. One of them is the one Mr. Keener mentioned before. It is receipt number 93. It's for $7,333.32. It's from the Valley View Local School District. I'm sorry. That is not the JET one, but that is a check. It's not the one Mr. Keener mentioned, sorry. But it is, it's from Valley View Local Schools, and it is the final payment on the school resource officer for this past school year. And now number 100 is the JET payment, $7,420.63. And it's our portion of those income taxes collected through the end of May. And are you saying, Mr. Skinner, it's only school personnel?
No, that includes some contractors that have submitted.
Okay, very good. And that payment was deposited into the township's general fund, which is allowed by the JED
So that's my question. Should we put that in a separate fund or?
There's no need to. It can be moved to whatever fund you want to use it in. If you don't want to use it in the general fund, by a simple resolution.
So, and most of you know this, that when the JED was formed, I made the argument that the money generated from the JED should be used to improve that property versus general fund. So that may be something to keep in mind. Once we accumulate, it may be a situation where the PTO comes to us and say, hey, we want to do this. And
I'll just comment on that, Dr. Cross. There is still, when we collect the JED money, I allocate it amongst the various pots, if you will. So there's 21% that is currently going into the pot for the JED fund. And so even after we've paid the expenses of the attorney and all of that, there's still about $5,000 left in there. So if the PTO, they will come first to the JED board, and we've got that $5,000 in there for that. So this money that came to the township is township's money. And yes, we can, the township, go and help the PTO out with something, but that
You get a person.
Germantown and Farmersville and Jackson Township will kick in a pro rata share of what they've been distributed out. That's their money. Yeah, we've got the $5,000 in there right now. So, and hopefully that'll accumulate quickly in the JED bank account, because at this point, once the law fees are paid, I mean, $6,000 legal bill from Brenda, $10,000 to reimburse Germantown their initial legal fees, which was paid for primarily out of the contributions that the township and the other entities paid. So it's back and forth. But hopefully over the next couple of years, that money in that project fund will accumulate fairly quickly.
Yeah. Thank you.
While we're talking about the JED, I was told by a city council person that Germantown Christian's moving into the Valley View building once Valley View vacates it. So Germantown
For the JED?
So Germantown's going to be getting even more income tax than they claimed they were going to lose. So just want to point that out.
But it hasn't been sold yet, so that is a possibility.
I heard it's a done deal. This is a council person told me that it's a done deal and Germantown Christians.
Well, the owner of the property says it's not a done deal. It is a possibility, but it will be going to auction. Unless Germantown takes it as an owner and then they in turn sell it to Germantown Christian, which they can do. I understood that the city was not going to do that. They didn't want to be on the chain of ownership.
Well, I have noticed they're in the, they've been buying a lot of some property in Germantown lately. So. Okay.
Okay, Mark, keep going.
Any questions about anything in the financials? If not, I'd like to have a motion to approve the June financial reports and authorize the payment of bills.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the June financial reports and authorize the payment of June bills, warrants 50683 through 50687, and vouchers 447 through 548, payroll, direct deposit, tax withholding, and other electronic payments.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Following your meeting last month, I did forward your resolution to the county auditor requesting that they certify the funds that would be received by the 1 mil 5-year renewal of the road levy. We received the auditor's certification, which I sent to you. And then the step for tonight is to pass a resolution to place the renewal levy on the November 7th ballot for the entire township, both incorporated and unincorporated. And I've given you that resolution.
I don't have it. You have it, Luke?
You can take my copy and read it. But it was in.
Yeah, it was what you said, but I didn't print it off. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll make this resolution 2023-32.
Okay, I'd like to introduce Resolution 2023-32, a resolution determining to proceed to levy a tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation. Whereas the Board of Trustees of German Township, Montgomery County, Ohio, have determined that the amount of taxes which may be raised within the 10 mil limitation will be insufficient to provide an adequate amount for the necessary requirements of said German Township, Montgomery County, Ohio. Whereas the Board of Trustees of German Township, Montgomery County, Ohio, have determined that it is necessary to levy a tax outside of the 10 mil limitation for German Township. Whereas the Board of Trustees of German Township, Montgomery County, Ohio, proposes that said tax will be a renewal levy for general construction, reconstruction, resurfacing, and repair of streets, roads, and bridges as specified in section 5705.19G of the Ohio Revised Code. Whereas the levy shall be a rate of 1 mil for each $1 valuation, which amounts to 10 cents for each $100 evaluation for a period of 5 years commencing in 2024, first due in calendar year 2025. Whereas the county auditor has certified the current total valuation of the unincorporated and incorporated area of German Township, and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by the proposed levy annually. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of German Township, Montgomery County, Ohio, 2/3 of all members electing or appointed thereto concurring, that the Board of Trustees of German Township, Montgomery County hereby determines to proceed with the renewal levy, and the question of said levy shall be submitted to the electors of the unincorporated and incorporated portions of German Township at the general election to be held on November 7th, 2023. Said tax is approved by a majority of said electors. Such tax levy shall first be placed in the 2024 tax list and duplicate the first collection calendar year 2025. Section 2, that the fiscal officer of the Board of Trustees of German Township, Montgomery County, Ohio, be and is hereby directed to certify a copy of this resolution to the Board of Elections, Montgomery County, Ohio, not less than 90 days before the date of said election upon which will be voted, and to notify said Board of Elections to cause notice of election on the question of levying said tax to be given as required by law.
There a second to the resolution?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Dr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Potter?
Yes.
Resolution 2023-32 is adopted, and I will submit that to the Board of Elections later this month. Okay, following up on another item from last month, Jean Roberts Powell is now scheduled to come tomorrow and start digitizing our township rural cemetery records. We'll be putting those on findagrave.com. So this is being done at no cost to the township. I'll be here in the morning to get her started. So any issues at all. On another follow-up item from last month, you gave me preliminary approval that for a $1,000 donation to begin planning a community celebration for the United States 250th anniversary in 2026. So following that, I went to my Historical Society board meeting on June 19th, where I received approval from them for another $1,000 donation. And Germantown City Council is going to discuss a similar donation at their August 7th work session. I've also reached out to Farmersville, Jackson Township, Valley View Schools, and the Farmersville Historical Society, as you had suggested, Mr. Stubbs, see if they had any interest in us expanding the celebration to the entire Valley View community. To date, I've not received any feedback from them whatsoever, any of those entities. Mr. Potter and I attended the Montgomery County Township Association meeting on June 22nd, and a couple of items were discussed that I thought would be of interest to our residents. First one deals with the One Ohio settlement back in 2022 for the opioid crisis. That is not the one that most recently we applied to be part of. This is the one from a year ago. 30% of that money comes directly to local governments, and we talked about that a year ago. But 55% of that goes to a statewide entity called One Ohio Recovery Foundation. And those foundation funds are going to be distributed starting in 2024 through a competitive application process, which will be available to nonprofits and service organizations. I imagine we'll get more information about that prior to those applications process starting. I'm not sure whether there'll be any local entities that would qualify, but we will see what the conditions are when we learn more about that. This next one, though, might be very helpful to our residents who have difficulty traveling to appointments. RTA has started a new program called RTA Connect, and it is an on-demand program. And they're using Uber and Lyft. And residents can travel door to door within a specific zone at no cost. This service is available from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. 7 days a week. Germantown and part of the township is in zone 1. And the part of the townships that is in that zone is primarily in the north and northeast sections of the township. But that zone 1 goes all the way east through Miamisburg to the Dayton Mall. So those people who live in zone 1 can travel anywhere within zone 1 at no cost. There was also countywide transit available for the disabled through RTA Connect. That is, so you can go anywhere in the county, but there is a cost for that, and that's $3.50 each way. And additional information about RTA Connect is available on the RTA website or by calling the RTA at 937-425-8300. RTA also has an on-demand 5310 program for countywide travel. This program transports seniors over 65 as well as the disabled to medical appointments or for grocery and pharmacy trips. And for this program, the cost is $5 each way, but that also allows you to bring an escort. And again, that one is also countywide, and more information you can get from RTA through their website or by calling them. And as an aside, the next Montgomery County Township Association meeting is on August 24th at 4 p.m. at the Montgomery County Business Solutions Center there in Dayton on Cincinnati Street. And I plan to attend, and if any of you want to attend, we'll talk about it again at next month's meeting. And finally, I sent a response to our county auditor, Carl Keith, waiving a hearing before the County Budget Commission at its August 28th meeting. And that would concern the township's tax budget and or inside millage for 2023, 2024. And this waiver is sent annually by the township. It's just a matter of something we do every year. So with that, I am done. Thank you,
Mark. Police report?
It's just brief tonight. So since Chief Hanzik is on vacation, I will be taking care of his report. The only thing he had on there was a joint meeting that the Chief Hanzik and myself attended with Mr. Schaller, the superintendent of Valley View Schools. The meeting consisted of a discussion of payment for a resource officer for next school year. As you may know, we gave the school district a sweetheart deal for year 1, but year 2, we asked for the full amount of the officer, the cruiser, and the time and benefits that our officer is using while working for the school district. Mr. Schaller was very understanding of the cost, and he expected us to ask for more this year. We gave him a total price of $73,257.57. They are working on a memorandum of understanding, which they will get to us, and we hope to have done for the August meeting. One question was brought up by the school district was, and what we had sent to them, if they're paying the full amount of the salary, we had asked that the officer stay in German Township the entire time of his day. The school district said, since they're paying for the full salary 100%, if with this number, would they be able to use the officer where they need him throughout the district? So that was the only question that came up during the time. I know you had, Dr. Cross had had preferred that our officers stay in the township.
Township, exactly where their jurisdiction is. So that was never resolved, still.
No, well, so I brought it back to us. They're saying since they're paying full salary, 100%, they think they should have the ability to move them around spend a majority of his time at the high school, but have the ability to move them as needed to say Farmersville or Germantown in the event that they need to do that. So
What was the chief's opinion on that request?
him and I talked, we didn't have an issue with since they're paying full salary, we're going to use this money to hopefully get a new full-time officer as soon as this goes through. So we're going to have another road officer. That spot's filled. The school can do with them. Our opinion was that they could do as they needed with them. So I brought it back to the board. Is that something you're comfortable with?
I would prefer that our German Township officers only work in German Township. Not up to us to go to Farmersville. They've got their own police force.
Well,
Township.
that's true, but when the school's paying for the SRO position, so he technically is an officer for German Township. He's the SRO for Valley View School District. So since they're paying his full salary.
Yeah, when you put it that way, I mean, I think out in the future, it'll all be consolidated.
And it won't, this is only got to be for a 1 year,
So,
a 1 year thing. So
I can tell you, I've talked to Officer Marston about it, and he's feels very strongly that being at the junior high part-time helps him form relationships with the students before they get to high school as well.
So does this mean then that the school will not be getting an SRO from the Germantown Police Department as they did last year?
that was not brought up. The only thing we discussed was the specific amount and our specific officer. Valerie Hill was also in the meeting, and she wanted to make sure, or wanted to clarify that we would allow the officer to go where the school district decides best. Or whatever given
Sure.
situation, if there's a
Yeah.
program or whatever.
If Officer Marsden.
Can you come up front, Mrs. Cross? So that people can hear on the recording?
Cross 7444 South Stiver Road. We know the school has money for an SRO. And with the SRO, Mr. Marsden is not in the school at the jurisdiction where our officers go. That means no one is. So are they going to get one for the Farmersville school? Or are they going to expect him to be there and then there's nobody at the high school?
Well, I think the plan is for him to spend most of his time at the high school. But again, this is just a 1 year, we're doing this on a 1 year memorandum of understanding until the new buildings. They said October of 24 is the estimated time of opening of the new building. So I think the plan is to have him mostly in German Township, but have the ability to move them where he needs to be.
And there's no one covering the high school if he's in junior high, right?
Well, yeah, but then there's no one covering the junior high when he's at the high school either.
Well, I know, but they have money to put an SRO there if they choose to spend the money.
I'm not sure they have enough to pay for. If you're saying one for the high school, one for the middle school, and one for the intermediate primary, I'm not sure they have enough to pay for 3 officers. I don't know.
Or funds.
That's,
It seems like there's a lot of funds there for an SRO. I mean, I don't know the specifics, but
they're paying for our officer, for our cruiser. They're paying for a full, 75% of his salary is because that's what the school year's in session. So, yeah, they're covering the portion. So their thought is that they can put him where they need him since he's our employee, but he's also their employee. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, and I feel like he's going to spend the majority of his time at the high school, but just have the ability to, if necessary. But that was the only issue brought up. So the school district is working on a memorandum of understanding. They have not, last time I talked to Chief Anzik Friday, they had not sent it in yet, so back to us. So when that does happen, He'll report on it next month, but that's all that he had in his report.
Just to let everyone know, we were paid $33,000 last year for the SRO and it cost us 66,000. So again,
Yeah, probably a little more.
yeah, so again, that's why we demanded they pay for the entire cost of it. So,
And they didn't, I mean, we told them what the cost was and Mr. Schaller was very understanding as to why we were asking for the full salary and there wasn't an issue there. So
good. Is it?
that's all for Chief's report.
Sean, a zoning report? Not a chief, together.
All right. June, we had 5 zoning permits were written, a covered walkway on Puddinbag Road, an above ground pool on Astoria, above ground pool on Germantown Middletown, pole barn on Harris, and a pole barn on Oxford. The BZA met on June 27th for the public hearing on the Kramer lot split on Carlisle Pike. That case was approved. BZA will meet tomorrow, July 11th, to discuss the possible lot split for Chad Gilbert's property on State Route 725. He just wants to take the small part of his lot that has a rental property currently. He's over having rental property. He just wants to split that off and be done with it. The German Township Rural Zoning Commission had their quarterly meeting on July 5th. The main topic of discussion was the need to add something to the zoning resolution concerning small solar facilities as well as residential solar panels. We have a special meeting scheduled for August 15th at 7 p.m. to further discuss putting regulations in place for residential solar. That is all I've got.
Just to follow up a little bit on that, there was a problem with overgrown vegetation on Art Street. The guy actually came and cleaned it up. We were so happy after we sent him a letter. So again, the zoning commission will meet next month. They're still trying to come up with some sort of regulations for solar farms. And when they met on the 5th, the board was pretty much unanimous in their opposition to citing any small or large solar facilities on prime agricultural soil. So I guess the next step is, we had talked about this at the special meeting on the 29th, whether to try to, at some time, make that moratorium permanent. And also to go to the Montgomery County Commissioners to restrict the large solar farms in the township. So basically, I think game plan wise, I will talk or get in touch with our legal counsel. I don't know if we can actually, because the way the resolution was passed on the 29th, because it basically was said that we're going to put a moratorium until the zoning commission can put regulations in place. I don't know if we have the power to make that a permanent moratorium. We'll talk to her about that. Certainly the other way to approach that is to have the zoning commission put in regulations in place that will control small solar facilities. The easiest way to do that would be to make it a conditional use in all the zoning districts. So it would have to go before any type of application would have to go before the BZA, which I think, well, it's something we'll discuss. We've got time. Again, if we place a moratorium, permanent moratorium, that takes that choice out of some landowner who, it may not be prime agricultural soil. There may be nothing that they can do with that property. So again, we could let the BZA determine that. I'm not sure how successful we'll be with the Montgomery County Commissioners because they just approved changing a zoning on a 70-acre lot in northeast Montgomery County to put a 49.9 megavolt solar array. Yeah, sorry.
So they kept it under the 50, which is regulated.
Yeah, so they kept it under the 50 because if it's 50 or over, it has to go before the Ohio Power Siting Board, which is a long process. And their first thing that the Ohio Power Siting Board has to do is have a public meeting to say this is what they want to do. So by going under 50, they can pretty much do it. So I will approach that again, try to talk to the county commissioners and see what they think, whether they would do something. Now, again, I'm not worried as much with the large ones, again, because the process to approve those is so difficult. We'll know all about it versus the small ones. There is no process, but hopefully the zoning commission will put some regulations in place that we can use to control that. So it's a lot to throw at you, but so anyway. That's all for zoning. Thank you. Mr. Potter?
Mr. Holbrook.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll try to make it brief. Just a few things on my agenda. Scott and I started with the 2023 crack seal program. We've been busy crack sealing some of the roads that are going to be chip sealed this year under the Ray Hensley Incorporated bid that we approved back on 4/7 of 23. We should be done tomorrow, I'm hoping. That machine, basically they buy the material from them and they let you use the machine. The rental is built into the cost of the material. So should be done with that tomorrow, weather permitting. Won't have any breakdowns. Parking lot repavement bids. Received 2 bids. One of them was from Barrett Materials, which was done under the 101G contract, which is the state bid contract. The total for that was $56,435.80. And Lou asked me to see if Hauser Incorporated would renew their bid, which they did. And their bid is $30,250. Problem is if we use the ARPA money, it has to be competitive bid. And it has to follow federal guidelines, not state guidelines. So.
And the Barrett is competitive.
The Barrett has been competitively bid and would meet the would meet the requirements of the ARPA. If the Board of Trustees wants to save $26,000, they could pay for the parking lot resurfacing out of the general fund. Because the 30,250 is not over the threshold of having to be competitive.
Why is there such a huge difference?
It's exactly the same. Requirements.
Square yardage, the amount of material.
Let's look at that before. Because we've got that micro purchase level of 50,000 we designated. I feel like we need to go back and look at those rules for the ARPA money. Too bad we didn't do that before tonight.
Do you want to explain that? Maybe what the money for this is coming from the American Rescue Plan funds.
We can use, because we designated the American Rescue Plan Act funds that came to the township, a total of a little over 300,000. Because we designated that as revenue loss, which was allowed under the provisions of the ARPA money. Anything under 10 million, a jurisdiction can designate as revenue loss. Even you don't have to prove it. Over 10 million, we would have had to prove it, but we didn't get anywhere close to 10 million. We got 300,000. But since it is federal money, we have to follow federal guidelines. And once a year, you as trustees have approved a micro purchase level as well as using uniform guidance guidelines in the ARPA federal guidelines. When we did Siegel Road using about half of the ARPA money, we did it using, did we use it? The 101G.
Mm-hmm.
We used the 101G state contract, which had already been competitively bid. And it was 140,000, I think we spent for that, somewhere in that range. It was about half of our ARPA money. But there are thresholds on what kind of bids you need to get. And under 50,000, I'm not sure that I remember that it has to be competitive bids. But I'd like to be able to check that out, unless you've already recently read those rules.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, in my mind, there's no choice. Because $26,000 is, there's too much of a swing between the two bids. So it'd be my recommendation to have Hauser do it and then determine how you can pay for it. Because you've got the money in the general fund and you've got the money in. So it's just a decision of, can you use the ARPA money or we got to pick up the check? If we keep sitting on this bid from Hauser, which we did with, when we did the Siegel Road paving, it went up significantly. And my fear is, you know, the $30,250 bid, you know, when we get around to one meeting, two more meetings, or, you know, or, yeah, I guess, yeah, you could schedule a special meeting, but does the board feel comfortable making a decision which route they want to go and then decide how they're going to pay for it? You know, when that time comes.
I think that's reasonable. I think we can easily do that as long as they're in agreement.
You know, am I speaking out of turn saying that the money is available in the general fund and in ARPA? So it's just a matter of where you're going to get
We
the.
have funds in both of those funds that could be used. It falls under the ARPA guidelines without competitive bids. We can certainly allocate the ARPA money to it. But at this point, we would probably say, let's approve it out of the general fund.
Okay.
And then we can change that appropriation by a subsequent resolution. I think that would be okay.
You're comfortable with Hauser's bid? That's much lower.
Yeah, I mean,
Wasn't last year's higher than that?
no, it's a little less than. I would also recommend doing the striping and sealing as well. I think if you did that, I mean, this lot has lasted, it's in pretty poor shape now, but it's lasted 20, 25 years. So I think anything we can do.
And that was just slightly more.
Yeah, it's $2,930 to seal it. That was like 3 to 6 months, or 3 to 4 months after the initial pavement was put down. And then the striping was $450. I think that's a no-brainer. But as far as the sealing, I think you need to make a decision whether you're going to do that or not tonight, because you're not going to want to pave it, have it striped, and then decide, oh yeah, that sounds like a real good deal. Let's go ahead and have it sealed. And then you have to go and have it striped again. So that would be my recommendation.
Can we go 3 to 4 months without handicap parking spaces?
You've got it marked on some.
Okay,
So,
that'd be my only question, would be the handicap requirement.
you know, 3 to 4 months without lines, yeah, it's a pain. But I think it's money better spent, not spending $450 twice.
So what's the total? I have not added it up.
In that up, Lou.
I need the numbers.
30,250. 150. And 2930.
Say 2760. The milling.
I'm sorry, and the 2760 per million.
$36,390.
36,390. I think if you do a resolution to approve this proposal using general funds, we can always come back next month and move the appropriation if we can figure out that ARPA money can be used. And that'll make that resolution 33.
Mark, you want to give a comment before?
Yeah, we have talked in years past about paving this and allocating money. And if we're going to be using general fund money, we had talked in the past before you were up there, Mr. Houston, about the fact that since part of this parking lot is used for trash people, I mean, if you sit in here on the trash collection months, there's a ton of people that come in here and drop their envelopes in Shauna's thing. and of allocating a portion of the parking lot paving back to the trash fund too. So it doesn't necessarily all have to come out of general fund, but I think you could make an argument that, 10 to 15% of the parking lot could be allocated towards the trash department, just based on the amount of traffic that comes
You
in.
could also do an allocation to police.
Well, we could, we could do police and road with the same thing. However, I know those budgets are probably a little bit tighter than trash, so.
I think we should just keep it simple and just go with the general fund.
This is a great use of our,
Got trash money we can't do anything with. It's that are in the past, so.
great use of our money that we're getting from the JED for not other reason. But I have a feeling it'll end up being ARPA money.
Hopefully it will.
But I think I just need to feel comfortable
Right.
that the
No,
rule.
I think that's wise.
So I think you start out with general tonight. If you want to allocate at a future meeting, we can do that as Mr. Keener has offered as an option. Or we can move it to ARPA if we're comfortable with the ARPA rules.
We haven't introduced that resolution.
No, we have not.
If the board is going to introduce that, then we should also give me the authority to sign on behalf of the township.
I will make sure to put that in the language.
What's the number?
33,
33, 23, 20,
2023, 33.
and then the amount of that money was
36,390.
390. Want to make a resolution of 2023-30, 33 for,
Contract with Hauser.
contract with Hauser to repave the blacktop for the amount of $36,390 out of the general fund. And give Jeremy the authority to sign the contract on the behalf of the township trustees.
Is there a second to the resolution? Any discussion?
Hopefully we can get this covered by ARPA. If not, I would like to look into at least allocating part of it next month to the trash billing, if possible. But hopefully it goes to the ARPA and we don't have to worry about it.
And I'm not sure I heard when you introduced that, did you also mention using the general fund?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other discussion? I'll call the roll. Dr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Resolution 2023-33 is adopted.
The only other thing I had on my agenda, on my report was Ray Hensley Incorporated should be here the end of this week or possibly next week to start with the chip seal that we approved back in April. So it's going to be kind of weather dependent. I also authorized a change order through Hensley, since we did it unit price, to have 4-foot edges chip sealed on EB Road from State Route 4 to Butler County line. If you remember, we had that paved through the State Infrastructure Bank 6 years ago, I think it was. And they're starting to get a little rough down through the edges, and I want to try that. So that addition to that contract would be $13,680. But since they did that as a unit cost, there wasn't a total on it. So it would be, since it was competitively bid.
We should pass a resolution giving him the authority to sign that change order for the amount of $13,680 and make that resolution 34.
Sorry, I need to have to tell me that again.
This is the change order.
Authorizing a change order with Ray Hensley Incorporated.
For the 4-foot edges on EB Road from State Route 4 south to Butler County line for $13,680.
And that's giving Mr. Holbrook authority to sign that change order.
That's correct.
Is there a second to resolution 2023-34?
I'll second.
Any discussion? If not, I'll call the roll. Dr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mr. Potter?
Yes.
And resolution 2023-34 is adopted.
That's all I have on my report.
Thanks, Jeremy. Sorry, that's Joe. No, that's all right. So quick report, I contacted Joe Garrett from Trey Bell Energy Systems on 7/5 to get an update on the electric and gas aggregation vote in November. And he stated that the first mailer will go out in August. He'll work with Mr. Houston to set up 2 required public informative meetings in November. We'll try to and that's October, I should say. We'll try to coordinate with Jackson Township so we can have, they can't make the Jackson Township meeting, they can come down here and vice versa. Germantown has received 1 application for the opening on the Fire EMS Oversight Committee that they will consider at their August meeting. It's Jeff Bobbitt. If we need to do anything with that until they meet.
I was planning on having you approve it at the August meeting once they've done their approval.
Okay.
But if you want to start it at this end, there's no reason why you can't tonight.
Yeah, okay, I'll make a motion to put Jeff Bobbitt on the Fire EMS Oversight Committee. It's approved by the Germantown Council, I should say.
Is there a second to the
Second.
motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is carried. I will let the city know that you've approved Mr. Bobbitt.
Any old business?
Do you not want to do reports?
Just
I just have a short report. I was actually in the parade, 4th of July parade, so I wasn't that involved with it, but Freddie Glander was our Grand Marshal, as you all know. He was very happy and appreciative of it. I did not hear of any issues with the parade like we did last year. And as far as the park's concerned, we have no new projects planned. We had a pool meeting. Pool is going good. They have had a few days closed for bad weather, but they was still happy so far with the way the money was coming in. No MMI meeting in June. Again, I went with Mark to the Montgomery County Township Association meeting. First time I'd done that, it was very informative. I was planning on going back. And I was going to ask about any more progress with the property down on Arch Street, Sunsbury.
we know.
Cleaned up.
He actually came down there with someone else who bush hogged it and then he cleaned everything else up.
That's good.
It's very good. So I talked to Mr. Buchanan, the neighbor. And pleased with it too. And hopefully he's going to maintain it this summer.
All right. Well, I've been at the fair this week. I'm a director with the fairground, so got some stuff going on. Taking care of that up there. So I have to head back up there when this is done. That concludes my report.
All right, I've just got a few things tonight from the cemetery. Keith continues to do a great job. I should have took that line out as he's sitting here today. I hate to brag on him when he's here. I brought a payment from the cemetery to the township for $10,000. I gave that to Mr. Easton prior to the meeting. And we're going to check and see where we're at on that, how many more payments are left. The cemetery looks great. Keith continues to do a great job and he's got some new ideas and made some changes and it's been for the better down there. Nothing against what Mark did, but having the fresh eyes and Keith coming in. One of the big things that I've already noticed is we purchased the TV for the office down there. And on his screen, he's able to take pictures of the cemetery and he can airdrop them from his phone so he can show the office workers what specifically on the TV in there. Or if a resident comes in and wants to see a lot or whatever, he can take pictures and just easily send it up to the screen. It's streamlined it. It makes it really nice. I know a couple times when I was in there last week, they had the weather up. So he can have at the desk, they have their computer, but a secondary monitor that they can keep the weather up if weather's bad and watch the radar as well. So that's definitely been an improvement. He's got several other great ideas and we're lucky to have him. continuing with the cemetery, we have 2 laptops that we need to dispose of, and we or discussed that we would like them to be placed on Gov Deals. So Jeremy, Shauna, can you help me get those? So we'll get those laptops up here. And I know using Gov Deals that we can pass the buyer's premium onto the buyers. So can we attach it so there's no cost to us? Okay, that would be good. And so we'll get those taken care of. Can I get them up here sometime this week? Probably, okay. One other thing from the cemetery, Julie, our fiscal officer, asked if to let Mr. Heaston know that she's going to be looking into the Star Ohio, putting some of the cemetery money in the Star Ohio, and if you'd be willing to help her out with the initial figuring out what to do. And I let her know, or yeah.
Tell her to call me.
Absolutely.
Be happy to help.
Absolutely. I already talked about Mr. Schaller and Valley View. I just like to thank our police officers. They don't get enough credit for what they do. They're doing a fantastic job. They keep our streets safe. They keep us all safe, and they do it above and beyond on a daily basis. Just to wrap up with the public health thing, I agree with you, Mr. Rowland. I don't see how they can do what they're doing, but that's all. That concludes my report.
Thanks, Jake. Now, any old business? Any new business? I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:46.
Thanks, everyone, for showing up. It's kind of a